Dawson Knox trying to turn himself upfield. Allen bouncing, escaping, firing end zone! Touchdown, Quentin Morris! In traffic, Morris!
Hello and welcome everybody to week 7 on the Empire League podcast. I am your commissioner, Andy Cahill. That's your commissioner, Scott Sprague. Scott, say hello.
Hello.
Jumping right into it, as always, I'm just going to remind everyone, outstanding league fees, it's $20. There's a link in the fucking chat. No excuses to not do it. But outside of that, another big announcement that went into the chat this week, Nolan essentially announcing the end of his regular season and saying that he's playing for 2024, which is hilarious considering there may not be a 2024 season with these rosters. Your reaction, Scott?
Well, he didn't specifically say that he was playing for 2024. He said he was rebuilding. So at least I know the construction around the Columbus area, when they say it'll be ready in 2024, we're looking at like a 2030 completion for his roster, and we're all looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to, like what will come first? My first child or Nolan being competitive in this league? A question no one knows the answer to.
No, he isn't taking bets on that.
And then Griffin announced through his play only that he is really going to challenge Nolan for that number 1 pick this year.
Yeah, he's put together a super non-competitive roster. He manages it the same way my building manager manages my apartment, which is horrifically. It's going to be a challenge of who tries the best and is still bad, and then who is just naturally bad. And I mean, from the top looking down, I'm excited to see where this turns out.
From the top looking down. Well, that brings us to the scoreboard review. Killing Unicorns did take away their 6th consecutive victory, but the question has to be asked.
What did it cost?
Everything. I was just battered all week, injury after injury, but we found a way to put it together, and that's the kind of gutsy performance that as a GM I was personally very proud of, looking at the guys in the locker room. In
the what should have been the matchup of the week, Benny Denny versus myself, got Saquon back, still wasn't enough. Pretty much the entire team struggled. Not much to say. Benny Denny showed up, showed out, and showed everyone that he can kick my ass. So congrats to Benny Denny on the well-earned victory there. Moving on, Nolan continues to not score 100 points. Olave Lamp scores 107, gets the win. I wouldn't necessarily call it a super impressive win, but a win is a win, and that puts Olave Lamp right up with Benny Denny and I at 4-2. So definitely announcing himself as a contender.
Yeah. I mean, we've said it since he came onto the scene. He's making smart moves, smart decisions. Yeah. Good roster lineups, and he's you don't have to look good to win. You just have to put up more points than your competitor. And when you're playing Moto Panda Keiko, that's easier done than said.
Yes. Next, we do have Sprague's Dogs taking out the Blown Knee Time Machine. Sprague's Dogs leans heavily on that Cowboys stack, and, it came through. What can we say? CD, Tony Pollard came through, and they powered him to a Monday night victory.
Yeah. As the Cowboys goes, so shall Sprague's Dogs. He did put in Matt Stafford at quarterback, which was probably a good way to stave off any potential, games that the Cowboys have that their defense scores more than their offense. I think Dak did end up doing better than Matt Stafford, but it didn't matter in this particular matchup.
Yeah, Dak was definitely better this week than he has been the last couple, but I still think having just a little bit of, a little bit of options for offensive firepower is always a good thing. And then finally, Briggsy scoring 110 points, showing that he's got a real team, but he didn't need it because he was taking on Griffin, who I just have to say a poor effort all around. Started Miles Sanders.
It was a piss poor effort. Let's not sugarcoat it. It was the worst score that's ever been put up in this league. He deserves to be shamed. His family should look at him differently after that week. I don't know how he looks at himself in the mirror. But I mean, we're talking about a guy who started Rodney Dowdle, an injured Miles Sanders, and you can be the judge of which of those two are more likely to put up points. The answer is neither. Sometimes you earn wins, and in this case, Briggsy just took it away.
Yeah, I will say Briggsy would have beaten Olave Lamb, obviously would have beaten me, would have beaten Nolan. So Briggsy definitely had a legit week, but again, didn't need it because Griffin's team just did not come to play. So that does bring us to you had a little bit of inside information, Scott, on one of our fellow competitors. I know that you and B Guider had a pretty close matchup there for a little while. So what happened after the game?
Yeah, so we'll talk about this real quick. This all goes into sportsmanship, and how you want to conduct yourself on the fantasy field. Everyone tries to bring a different edge. He reaches out before the Sunday slate starts and says, "Good luck," to which I responded, "Good luck to you as well, but, let's just hope everyone makes it out healthy." I took injury after injury after injury, throughout the day on Sunday. My phone was blowing up with injury notifications like it was an air raid siren in Gaza. Just people falling apart left, right, and center. Still managed the win, but what struck me as concerning is that going into the Sunday night game, he was up by 20. I still had Diggs and Allen left. He reaches out before that game even starts and says, that he concedes, I don't have a chance. Good, you took it, no big deal. And I said, no, this is fantasy football. Anything can happen. If Josh Allen gets hurt, which he did, that could lead to your team winning. If the Bills defense scores a couple touchdowns or a running touchdown, I wasn't convinced that I had the win yet. And just as someone that, this is a man with two small children who are looking how to explore, how to take on the world. And you're showing them that it's okay to just give up on your team before the match is even over. And I've had quite a few wins so far this season. Each one I felt respect for my fellow competitor. This one I didn't. It is a classless individual. I'm not surprised that your team gave up on you, quite frankly, because you gave up on them. So, I've known Brian since I was a month old. He was my first friend. And in that time, this sort of characteristic of being unprofessional, unsportsmanship qualities, and all this time, I haven't found one shred of evidence that he's not out there endorsing terrorism and violence. And
okay, we're gonna cut it off
Andrea, I know you're out there, friend of the pod. This is Brian's wife. If you need anything, if your kids need anything, reach out to me, reach out to Andy. We'll take care of you. You don't have to live in an environment like that. Just absolute classless bullshit.
That last part definitely true, but yeah, definitely disappointing to hear from a competitor like B Guider, but as my biggest rival, he can kind of go fuck himself. So on to the power rankings.
What kind of competitor gives up on his own team with the whole Sunday night game left to go?
Especially when we all know the Bills were playing the vaunted Giants.
Yeah. Well, and then after the game, which he again lost, he starts reaching out and doing victory laps on my players who got injured, even though they were still fine enough to beat your sorry ass team.
No one likes celebrating. Nobody likes a guy who celebrates injuries. No one.
I would even have a shred of respect for him if he was celebrating injuries that he beat, but he wasn't able to do that. So Brian, absolute trash franchise. I mean, this is the kind of thing that can jar our locker room. Your fans are gonna start coming to the door asking for management changes. And I'm not gonna be here to support you when that happens.
Going on to the power rankings, obviously Killing Unicorns did take the win, as we just discussed, 6-0, most points in the league, absolutely dominant. However, did take a lot of injuries. There is an opening for the next couple weeks. See what happens with some of these guys. But there's no question in the power rankings, Killing Unicorns far and away number one. Scott and I were talking earlier, and we came to the agreement that we need to split tier 2 up. We have 2A with 2B. Benny Denny has cleared 2A into 2A. He's got it all to himself. Kicked my ass. Up and down the field. I applaud Benny Denny, and I say I think we agree he's in that 2A tier. And then that brings us to 2B. I'm still 4-2. I still have a lot of points in this league, so 2B seems right. But Olave Lamp, unquestionably, has entered the conversation. He is in that second tier. He is as close to locked into a playoff run as someone can be at this point. And he's announced himself as someone to be taken very seriously. Made a great move that we'll talk about later to a win now move, which he hasn't made a lot of those. So that's pretty much locked in. And then the tier 3 and tier 4 haven't really moved that much. So what are your thoughts on this, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, you said it well. I've taken Tequila Bob seriously since the moment I met him. I knew he was not somebody to be fucked with. That tier 3 is all of your playoff bubble teams currently. Obviously, we're still a ways away from anybody clinching, but these are the bubble teams: Sprague's Dogs, B Guider, Trash. Briggsy is in there, and especially now that he's getting healthy, I could see a couple more wins going his way. And then there's that bottom tier that we've talked about before. Right now in the rankings, it goes Griffin, Blown Knee Time Machine, and then Moto Panakeiko. Blown Knee Time Machine is the ham and cheese in that shit sandwich between Griffin and Moto Panakeiko. I think we both agree that is about to turn into an open faced sandwich with that ham and cheese sitting on top of both of those garbage franchise. Blown Knee, I see you down there. I see you in second to last place. We all believe in you. We see you making the right moves. Trust the process. Maybe it's a branding thing. Maybe you need to move away from the blown knee.
My leg's broke! Oh my god. Fuck! Holy shit! Holy shit! I broke my fucking leg!
We see big things coming for you, bud.
That franchise has been able to, make some good moves, and I see an upward trajectory. I don't want the name to be quite as negative, so I think that a rebrand is definitely in order.
You've shown that you're more than just Chubb.
That's correct. So yeah, I think that I totally agree with the bottom tier. I think that Nolan and Griff are really going to fight it out for the number one pick, and personally, I'm excited to see how low they can go. I think that's going to be really exciting to watch. Speaking of teams fighting for the number one pick, I think we kind of teased this last week, but we want to talk about roster construction, especially as it pertains to trades. Scott, I know this is something that you're really passionate about, so why don't you take the lead on this and tell us what you're thinking?
Yeah, and this isn't really even just relevant to those bottom dumpster teams. It's something that we all need to think about. But I don't think there's anybody in the league right now that shouldn't know if they are a building or rebuilding team. I've talked about it before where I've said, the cardinal sin that you can have in fantasy football is just being stagnant. I think a lot of these teams are sort of sitting at that 3-3, 2-3 kind of bubble, and they still don't know if this is a year that they want to push for it or this is a year that they want to be looking towards the future. And with that is like some trade etiquette that we've talked about before, but something that I saw Bob do last week that I really respected is he came on the group chat and he said, I need a starting running back right now. That's what I'm looking for. Here's what I'm willing to give up. I'm giving a first round pick to the first person. that offers me a deal. I'll give you till this timeline, and whoever offers me the best deal for what I'm looking for, I'm going to take. And then sure enough, he did. I get a lot of trade offers, as I know we do, where it is, I see what the person is trying to get from me, and they're trying to get, a startable contender, but what they're giving up is hot, steamy garbage shit. And that's not something that I want. So you have to know the value of what it is you're trying to acquire, and know the value of what it is that you can give away so you can actually buy the thing that you want. We see a lot of, I want this guy off your team, but so I'm going to give up a 2026 third round pick for him. I'm like, no, that doesn't help my team. In all the trades that I've done so far in this league, and I'm quite certain I've done the most, there has been a dialogue between me and the other manager. Yeah. And there was a clear understanding between us of what it was I was trying to do to make my team better, and what I was willing to give up or part with to make your team better in giving me that piece. I've never tried to go after a player maliciously and just say like, oh, here, and like spin some, ball of yarn about how this player I was giving up, he's going to be the answer for you. We all know that those trades happen, and those trades are all bullshit. So I think having a respect for how can I make your team better while I get what I want is something that's missing in a lot of the trade offers going out.
Yeah, I think that it, and I know that, we'll probably get into this a little bit more, but I think it's also important to know, and you kind of touched on this, like certain owners are going to have different values attached to different players. So obviously my team is named after Saquon. Like, I am a Giants fan. I only have him. He is my heart. So if you're going to try and trade for Saquon, I'm going to probably ask more than like an objective person would ask for him, right? Like, it's like you got to know that when you're going into it. It's like if you're making a trade with someone who, like, before Chubb blew out his knee, if I was going to try and trade for Nick Chubb with the hot Chubb time machine, I know I'm going to pay a premium to get a guy who's like special to that owner. And likewise, like if that guy, if that owner made a trade to acquire someone and gave up a lot of assets to acquire that person, like last year, right? Like I know Scott, like you made a huge trade with Nolan, I think, to get CMC, and you gave up a bunch of future assets and like young guys and whatever. So it's like, if I'm going to try and trade with Nolan to get one of those young guys that he literally gave up CMC for, a move that he may or may not regret right now, like I'm likely going to have to pay a premium to get one of those guys because of the sunk cost that Nolan perceives, and I'm not saying that that's actually a conversation I've had with Nolan. I'm just saying, like, in general, like you have to know the context around a guy. If it's just a guy who's been on the roster for a couple of years, like it's probably easier to make that deal and do what you would perceive as fair value. So I just think like it's important to just say that as well. And that's why it's so important that when you get a trade offer, or you just in general, it's so important to just participate in the chat, talk to guys, like start a conversation, start a dialogue, right? Like we've kind of talked about this, where it's like, this isn't a league where it's like everyone in the league knows each other, and like we obviously don't live in the same place. So, it's not like we're having casual conversations. It's like only about fantasy football. So, we do need to make sure that we are talking to one another so that we can kind of understand how people think about trades and how people think about transactions and how people think about fantasy football.
Yeah. And even moving past trading for superstars like Saquon or CMC or Nick Chubb, most of my trades have come through trading the exchange of depth pieces to make my bench more sustainable, which thank Christ I did. It's the only way I can navigate the injuries I currently have. But again, I was willing to give up a lot for the things that I have. So I've made a list of trades I've made as I was making them throughout last year and this year. It's something that I highly recommend you guys do, just so you can keep track of what you had, what you've changed, trades that worked. And I've made quite a few trades that didn't work out in my favor. And so here's a list of assets that I've given up to get all of the things that I currently have. Isaiah Pacheco, Aaron Jones, Donta Foreman, and this is when he was the starter in Chicago last year. I traded him. So when he was at peak value. Kenny Pickett, same, when he came onto the scene, he was the hotness. But that was my window, I thought, to move him. Alan Lazard, Javonte Williams, Devonta Smith, Dawson Knox, 5 first-round picks, 5 second-round picks, 2 third-round picks. I have brought in a lot, but I have also given up a lot. And I don't think there's anybody that has traded with me that thinks that they got shafted or didn't get a fair value. Obviously hindsight is 2020. And, once you make a trade, the perception of what the value of it was then versus, I brought in Justin Fields and the next week he popped off for 44 points. You feel silly about it then, but then cut to, the beginning of this season and you're like, oh, I'm glad I got him off my roster. So it's about not being afraid to be wrong when you make those trades. And all the best trades I've made in fantasy, I've always been very nervous to hit that accept button because I knew I was getting everything I wanted, but I was always giving away slightly more than I originally was willing to. And that has led to the best trades when I knew I was giving up something, but I knew I was getting the guy that I wanted back.
Yeah. And I would say you go through that list. I remember many of those trades, and I can't say I remember all of them. So you've traded away so many things. But I think that, Nolan, you made a big trade with Nolan. A lot of some of those pieces in the middle, like Javonte, Lazard, a couple other guys. I think those were all in one trade with Nolan for the CMC trade. I could be wrong, but I think that for the most part, when we see trades take place, both teams are benefiting eventually, right? It's like you said, it's if you're a team, and this is what we've been kind of talking about for a couple weeks now, right? Where it's if you are a team that is consistently scoring 90 points, just barely touching 100, right? And you probably have one guy who's your guy, but then the rest of your roster might be complete dog shit. You might actually benefit. Like I said last week, it's a math game, right? If one guy is getting you 18, 20, 25 points a week, but 2 guys can get you 30 points a week, then having those 2 guys is more beneficial to your team in the long run. And so it's that's what we're talking about when we talk about trades, where it's just making sure you might be giving up a starter or even a top 10 guy at that position and getting 2 guys who are, top 20 at that position, but that might make your team better. So don't be afraid to trade the name in order to get the numbers.
Exactly. Yeah. And all of that again is, informed by your decision as the manager of this is a year I can see myself making the playoffs, or this is a year that I think I want to move back in the rankings a little bit. Nobody wants to tank the way that Nolan has done in his career, or that Griffin is really starting to adopt that play style. But if you know what you are, then you know what type of assets are going to be more beneficial to you. And so, and to help facilitate trades, either when I release this tonight or tomorrow at some point, I'm going to start a text chain with everybody. So I'll send that out. Everyone just pop their names in it, and then we can forget that text chain exists. That way everyone has everyone's phone number and can text for group chats. And because again, most of the more lucrative trades I've made have always come from, I didn't even know you were looking for a backup quarterback. All right, well, I got Kenny Pickett. He's now starting in Pittsburgh, and obviously, we know what Kenny Pickett is now, but at the time, again, he was the hotness. And, but that manager really needed that piece that I didn't even know until I asked. And likewise with Justin Fields, Nolan says, kind of offhand, I'm not feeling Fields anymore. I was kind of thinking about dropping him. And I was like, oh, well, I'll add in another pick if you want to give me Fields instead of just dropping him to the waiver wire. These are all things that can help your team. And even before waiver wire runs, you can reach out if you have an extra depth piece and just say, hey, I'll give you, or I'll trade you this player that I'm probably going to drop for $5 fab. And that way you don't have to compete on the waiver wire. You can just do an easy transaction right there if someone's trying to clear up a roster space or something like that.
I do just want to say one more thing, and then we're going to move on to the transactions for the week. We've talked a little bit about, knowing that you're rebuilding, tanking, etc. Obviously, and this is a little bit off subject, but I do want to just make this clear. The reason that we in this league have added our contrition, the payments, the videos, etc., is to hopefully dissuade people from full on tanking and scoring 60 points in a week. Hopefully the idea that spending $20 every time that you're terrible or making an embarrassing video is enough to dissuade you from doing that. And I want to make it very clear to the whole league, we take those contritions very seriously, the two of us. And we actively want to see your videos, right? We don't want you guys to be tanking, and we don't want to see videos from the same people every single week. But if you're going to be rebuilding, if you're going to be tanking, that's okay. Just be honest with yourself, be honest with the league. And I guarantee you will get trade offers if you are I'm trying to get as many picks as possible so that I can draft everyone. I can draft 7 quarterbacks next year. And really compete with Nolan. So anyway,
one more thing on trade etiquette, and then we will move on, I promise. Because this pissed me off, and it was just a fallacy in logic. But I received a trade offer for I believe it was David Montgomery when he was on my bench coming back from injury, and then the response was, "But he's on your bench." And I've gotten a couple like that, oh, he's on your bench, so he's not worth trade return. And first of all, he is. So fuck you, Bob. And second of all, just because he's on my bench, if he's going to be a starter for you, or it's bench starting flex, it doesn't matter. The player is worth what they're worth. And sometimes those lineup decisions are matchup dependent, or in that case, he was on my bench because he was just coming back from injury. I didn't know if he'd be on a snap count or whatever. But the player is valued at what they're valued. And, so trying to lowball because of the position he is on your roster, I built a very strong roster. And specifically my bench, which is why, we talked about the week I played Nolan, my bench outscored him. And that was, something I did on purpose. So if 1 or 2 of my starters got hurt, I would have, people not like Rodney Dowdle and whoever the fuck else you guys are starting when you have bye weeks. I have reasonable people to put in and sustain those bye weeks and sustain those injuries.
Yeah. No, definitely. And again, that just goes back to understanding what the value of the player is, both in the, kind of objective reality, whatever that means, and also to each individual, participant in the league. So, I'm glad we were able to have this conversation, and I think it's really important. I hope that, between now and the trade deadline, we start to see more moves, even if they're small, kind of on the fringes. I hope that, I'm looking forward to the text chain going out, getting everybody, in communication with one another. And I'm really happy about that. So with that being said, we are going to move on to transactions now.
Yeah, there's a big trade on, I believe, last Thursday, where Tequila Bob did exactly what he said. He said he wanted a starting running back, and I'm willing to give up a first-round pick for him. And sure enough, he brought in Derrick Henry and had to give away more than a first-round pick. He gave up the $69 million man, Jaleel McLaughlin.
Nice.
As well as a first-round pick to bring in Derrick Henry. So he wanted someone that would make him more competitive now. Obviously, Hot Chub Time Machine, I'm going back to the original name, does what his team needed, which is a depth running piece, which is, on the ascend, I would say. And, whether whether he hits or not, he gets to have a first-round pick to pair with it next year.
So, yeah, I think that Tequila Bob, has been making a lot of these sort of, build for the future moves. I know I've tried to make some trades with him, and he doesn't want to take veterans. Clearly, trading for Derrick Henry and giving up a first-round pick announces that Bob sees an opportunity to compete for a championship, and I absolutely love that. So I don't know if Derrick Henry is necessarily going to be the guy moving forward in Tennessee, but I think it's a great aggressive move and the kind of move that we were just talking about wanting to see more of. So, with that said, let's slide into the Week 7 waiver wire. It wasn't necessarily the kind of waiver wire we've seen the last couple weeks, but still had some nice options out there, with the number one option being Kareem Hunt, who went to Briggsy for $20. You had Kareem Hunt. You dropped him last week on his bye. So, of course, he was going to come back and score a touchdown and look like a real fantasy running back. So what are your thoughts, on the waiver wire this week in general?
It was the week of backup running backs on the waiver wire. Yes, I did drop Kareem Hunt. Yes, he did come back and look good. We had PJ Walker in at quarterback, and Gerald Ford was also questionable going in. So I think
isn't it Jerome Ford?
I don't care if it's the Ford Focus. It's whoever the fuck. I'll remember his name when he starts scoring touchdowns for the Browns. But he was questionable coming in, so Hunt got a big workload. I think it goes back to being a 50-50 split. But I never dropped him because I didn't believe in the talent. It was just that I needed, I believe I dropped him for KJ Osborne, which was a much more important piece to the team I was building. And then moving along, we see a $12 dump on Jordan Mason. It's never a bad option to have a running back in San Francisco. Clearly they go through him pretty aggressively. But I do think CMC is, on pace to be back at least Monday night, and Elijah Mitchell is the 1B over there. But again, a depth add for B Guider.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, going back to Kareem Hunt really quick, nice to see Griffin trying to get better, putting in, I thought, a reasonable offer. $10 was a reasonable offer. B Guider, same thing. Benny Denny, who does not need more good players, but still being aggressive, like to see it. And then, you obviously put $6 or fewer dollars on everyone who got picked up this week.
That was another prophylactic measure to make sure nobody got anybody for free. Really, I wasn't expecting to pick up anybody for the $6 or $4 in the case of Jordan Mason. I wasn't expecting to actually get any of them. But I did end up picking up Craig Reynolds, which is great. I needed it to be my David Montgomery backup. I think Montgomery is going to be out probably this week and next week, and then he gets a bye, and then he should be back. But that Detroit offensive line is just too good to not have a piece of. And they've already shown that when Montgomery misses time, they're not going to give the bell cow work to Jahmyr Gibbs. So Craig Reynolds should be good unless, once again, because he's on my team, I'm getting sleeper notifications that he missed practice today with 2 different injuries. So I really feel like I got a deal there. Fuck, dude. At this point, I'm just going to trade for David Njoku with his burnt off fucking face.
What, you smoke too much? What's wrong with your face? Anyways.
Because he deserves to be on my team with the injuries. He'll fit right in. God damn, man. This was such a rough week. But going into this waiver wire, I was not planning on picking up or dropping anybody because of the moves I made last week. But then the situation changed when I had a litany of injuries. And so I felt like I needed to do something just to stave the gap until my players get healthy. You mentioned last week the importance of, or maybe it was the week before, of if your player goes down, that backup is more valuable to you than it is to some of these other teams. So, and again, sort of what we were talking about earlier about the not being stagnant when things happen to your team. I'll say this, and it'll be the last thing we talk about my team and trades until the next trade I make. There has been a direct relationship to how often I felt something on my team needed to change and how often something on my team changes. And I don't know if I made the right choice every time. I know some I definitely haven't. But if you feel like there is something that needs to happen on your team, go do something and see what happens.
See, as you can see, the more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out. And also, if you stay down here and you never fuck around, you'll never find out.
I agree. I think that, going back to the waiver wire, like Jordan Mason probably isn't the guy, but it's worth money. I think that the philosophy that you have put forth the last couple of weeks of like guys who could potentially be good are not going to be, gotten for free is a good one. I think that, the beauty of Fab is that like you can put $1 on a guy, and like if no one else puts a bid in or people put in $0 bids, you're gonna get that guy. And it's like
Leonard Fournette goes to Tequila Bob for $1.
Exactly.
If I wasn't afraid that I would have ended up with like 6 different backup running backs and spent $24 on them, I probably would have put $1 bid down on Leonard Fournette too.
Yeah, and I mean it's something like you put $1 or whatever you put down on Keontae Ingram last week, right? Everyone in the fantasy world assumes that Amari DeMarcado is going to be the starter in Arizona. Who gets the fucking start? Keontae Ingram and Damian Williams from the crypt. It's like those are the guys that get the carries. So, I put in like this huge bid on Amari. He doesn't even fucking play for the most part. And then you get Keontae. And we mentioned it last week that, like you were like, I'm not letting this guy go for free. You end up getting him, and he ends up being the starter of a 2.5-headed monster. So it's not like someone who's going to be a league winner or anything crazy, but that's still a guy
who could very well be in my starting lineup. And actually right now he is in my starting lineup.
He's the number one guy in Arizona. Whether that means anything or not, I don't know, but he is the number one guy on that team. So it's still like, it's like, that's the kind of thing where it's like because I do feel a little bit bad. Like I want to make it clear to the whole league. I feel a little bit bad about like constantly complaining, feeling like, oh, do I think like I'm superior? I'm like, no, I'm not superior. Like, am I the rank? Okay, I won last year because I went on like a magical run. I didn't win because I had like some dominant team that was just like killing people. Like, and this year, it's been an up and down year. It's been mostly good. I feel good about my team, but by no means am I like some fantasy fucking expert. I'm just like,
no, you snuck into the playoffs on a Sunday night, on the last Sunday night of the regular season. Yep. And then you won 3 more games and that was it. And then you're the champion.
And that's why it's like, when we talk about these things like, waiver wire pickups, trades, making moves, being active, it's not because we're like, you need to do XYZ or you're going to lose. Right. It's just saying like, hey, like, let me take a shot, let me like make a play here because what I'm doing right now isn't working. So let me like see if I can improve. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know
the
what
most
I'm
fun,
saying.
The most fun, obviously watching, a Christian McCaffrey or a Tyreek Hill go out there and have his day.
Yeah.
It's coming and then it happens and you feel great about it. But there's no better rush than when you take a shot on somebody that nobody else believes in. And then you're all of a sudden you're seeing them on NFL Red Zone and you're going nuts because the guy nobody else believed in, you took a shot on, won you the week with a 70-yard catch or a 69-yard run if you're Jaleel McLaughlin.
Nice.
So anything can and will happen, but if you don't take any of those shots, then your odds of something happening go down drastically.
And just like you said with Craig Reynolds, like I think that's a really solid pickup. Is he gonna be like a bell cow back for the Lions? I have no idea. But like, it's like, I don't think so. But it's like, what do you know about the Lions? They've invested heavily in their offensive line. Their offensive line is thus very fucking good. So the likelihood that they continue to run the ball is high. Who's going to do it? Yeah, Jamar Gibbs is going to do it a little bit, but so is Craig Reynolds. And who's going to be the one on the goal line to get the opportunities? it's going to be Craig Reynolds. And all it takes, we saw this with Jamal Williams last year, right? All it takes is for you to get the goal line carries for you to be startable, because you can score 3 touchdowns on 4 carries and score 18 points. Like,
yeah, I've had somebody this year already that had 2 rushing touchdowns and like -9 yards on the ground. And I still don't know how it was possible, but these things can happen if the shots that you're getting are coming, this far from the goal line, and you weigh 260 pounds, you can just brute your way right through there.
Yeah, I mean, Devon Achane is a top 5 running back, and he gets like 12 carries a game.
He's so fast. That's different.
He's very fast. He's very good at football.
He's just faster than everybody.
He's
agree. So fast that his hamstring broke away from its body because humans weren't built to be that fast.
I agree that obviously, it's like a little bit different with a guy like Achane, but it's just like, that's the thing where it's like, you're just looking for guys who will maximize the opportunities that they get. Achane does that from 70 yards away, but Craig Reynolds can do that from 2 yards away. So, that's, I think fast. The waiver wire this week was like, not super exciting, but it is just always really nice as a commissioner and as someone who's like really invested in like the league being fun for everyone, to see teams like putting in aggressive bids, especially teams that, are in it. Like, they don't need to be much better than they are in order to be competitive. And like, to see a Benny Denny going after a Kareem Hunt is like exciting.
Love that.
Because it means that he cares.
And again, I'm trying to make moves to make sure that I feel like I'm outbidding Andy on some of these people that can pop off, because again, and we'll keep saying it until the season's over, or at least until he gets eliminated. If he wins, it's all over. It's done. The league is over. We reset. And then we have to deal with him being the only empire until somebody else figures out how to do it. Before we move off the waiver wire, potential terrorist sympathizer B Guider did sign Derek Carr for $0, a depth move. But it also happened on the waiver wire.
My guy B Guider is going to end up on a fucking watch list after this pod.
I'm watching him, so he's on my list.
So this is not waiver wire news, but it is something that's just worth mentioning, since we are in acquisitions mode here. Kyler Murray did have his 21-day window activated today. So he's in the 21-day window. He was at practice. So, just worth noting as the Kyler Murray owner that
are you trying to team up in a trade after I just said nobody trade with Andy?
The little guy is making a comeback. That's all I have to say about it. And Josh Dobbs has looked very playable, and he's not as good as Kyler Murray. So that's all I'm saying. Moving on to the matchup previews. We do have another great week of matchups, I think. Like, we've got Briggsy with easily the best opportunity all year to take out Killing Unicorns, with Killing Unicorns playing the B team.
Yeah, it's some of them are my C team. Yeah, so Briggsy has a shot to take down the Killing Unicorns junior varsity football team. The parents of my players are going to be in attendance. I don't imagine many more fans come out to watch this one. We're hoping to get CMC back in the lineup. We're hoping to get Josh Allen back in the lineup. We're hoping for a lot of things, but yeah, that's one that I don't feel super confident in, but we'll see how that shakes out.
Yes, I look forward to Briggsy being called a potential terrorist sympathizer next week.
No, he's a classy gentleman. He would never.
I'm going to take on Olave Lamp in the battle of the 2B tier. I don't know. I mean, last week, just nobody showed up. No one at all. So there is definitely a distinct possibility it happens again. But, Saquon, I believe in you. You perfect angel.
Moving on. Sprague's Dogs gets a bye week playing Moto Panakeiko. It's a good opportunity. I hear a lot of his players are taking the family out on vacation. Should be a great time to rest up. Blown Knee Time Machine has a great chance to move out of the dumpster.
Yes.
Taking on Griffin. This is going to be a statement win for Blown Knee Time Machine if he can pull it off. He needs to make moves now to get the stink of the 2 shit franchises away from him.
Yes.
But if he loses, Goodness gracious, man! Look at yourself in the mirror.
I think definitely for blown knee, it is win now or play for next year. Like,
Yes.
if you can't beat Griffin when he has no running backs, I think it might be time to wrap it up.
If you can't beat Griffin with the running backs that he had, then it's time to wrap it up.
Yeah. So
looking at the standings, which we did, I really, any loss that Saquon or Benny Denny can have at this point in the year is going to give me a little bit more cushion looking at that first round bye week. But
yeah,
beat the shit out of Brian Guider. I mean, goddamn, just trash him. I hope it's an absolute blowout. I hope you put up 300 points. I hope Brian Guider sets the new low, which will be hard to do because Griffin set it pretty fucking low.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have to disagree. I'm obligated to disagree. Like, B Guider, not a fan, right? I'm not a fan of the behavior. I'm not a fan of the fact that he beat me in week 1. I am a fan of eliminating him from the playoffs. But I really need Benny Denny to fucking lose. So, sometimes the enemy of your enemy is your friend. And so that is the situation this time around. So it's going to be a thrilling week. I'm really excited. We do have some pretty tough, bye week situations this week. So it's very, very interesting. Obviously, Scott just decimated by injuries, as he will be the first.
Ironically, very few bye weeks to worry about for me this week. But it feels like half my roster is taking a bye week to just get better, guys.
Yeah.
If we take a loss, we'll take a loss. But I sure would love to go 7-0 with the roster that I'm putting out there. Would be special.
Yeah, Briggsy, like, there really is no excuse to not pull this off. So I think that it is important. For the bye weeks this week, it looks like we've got Carolina, Cincinnati, Dallas, Houston, the Jets, and the Titans. So, not necessarily. I mean, this is bad for Sprague's Dogs. Sprague's Dogs is in danger.
But he's also playing Nolan, so
it's the best week to play
when
Nolan.
they drew up the schedule, they knew what they were doing.
I'm obviously missing Chase. There's other very solid players on some of these very bad teams that are on buys, but I think that ultimately it should be a fun week. But yeah, that's gonna do it for the matchup previews. Scott, I know that you had some closing thoughts that you wanted to give the people, so I turn it over to you once again.
Well, thought number 1, Brian, you're trash and garbage and you should feel terrible about your actions. But more relative to the entire league, so we've done this podcast. This is now the 4th week that we're putting it out. And we did 2 dry runs in week 1 and 2. And I want to hear from you guys. What have you seen so far that you liked, that you'd like us to keep doing? What is something that we haven't done yet that we would like to? Do you want to see us looking at other people's rosters and really breaking them down? I know you've heard a lot about me and Andy's rosters, which you will still do because, again, my podcast, I edit it. Go fuck yourselves. But if there's something that you want to see, if you want to do a mailbag show where you guys send us questions and we'll answer them about football, the NFL, fantasy football, what is interesting to you? Do you want to keep seeing me spiral and do more Killing Unicorns Corner? Great. Do you listen to it? Do you watch it? Do you want people to come on and start talking, having guests that aren't Nolan talk about actual competitive rosters? These are all things we can do, but I'm interested in what's going to be entertaining for you guys.
Yeah, definitely want to highlight that watching versus listening question. If you are watching, you'll see how much work Scott is putting into the edit each week. And, I personally enjoy it, but if most people are just listening to it while they're at work or, wherever, definitely something that we're going to want to know so that, we can hopefully make things a little easier. Not that we really care about Scott's time, but
or mental health.
I don't care about your mental health at all, but your
no,
time
but
is
that's
somewhat
left a
valuable.
long time ago. So yeah, no, I really enjoy putting these together. I hope you guys enjoy, experiencing them however you do, and just let us know what will make this better. And if it's in line with what I think is fun to do, then we'll do it. And if I don't like your idea, then we won't.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching/listening to the Week 7 Empire League podcast. We will be back next week. Good luck, everybody.
Goodbye.